Hi, and welcome to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is February the 25th, 2025. And we're glad that you're with us. And Michael's preparing to go to a conference in Asheville, North Carolina. I'll let him talk about more what we're going to do on the show while he's gone. And then the next week, he's doing the Quantum StillPoint here in Bristol, Tennessee. Has several people coming in for that. And so that should be an exciting week. And I will let Michael explain what we're going to do in the meantime. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Delighted and honored that you're here. And looking forward to what unfolds today. Yesterday, Susan kind of stimulated some things for me, and we'll be opening a conversation that'll be a kind of a continuation of what we started yesterday, but some new refinements. But first of all, what we're going to be doing in Quantum StillPoint is next week. Actually, I'm heading to Asheville, North Carolina on Thursday to spend time with Patrick. He has invited me to come down to a Tai Chi class, so I'm going to go down and spend time with Patrick for a couple of days in Asheville, North Carolina, doing a shop, and then we're coming back, and Sunday afternoon we'll begin our Quantum StillPoint week of training Patrick and working on Patrick, and Patrick working on me, and then we've got a couple of people who are coming in to participate in building that energy. So next week I will not be available for the show, and so that you have awareness of what's coming, we're going to do a special series which we're going to title Preparing for Quantum Healing. And what Jeannie's doing is taking several of our videos that are videos that normally we sell of our workshops that are in our catalog, and she's converting those, so she'll be playing those. So as of the 27th of February, the series will be on Podbean, so please make sure you've got the Podbean Podbean app downloaded. Go in and register. They'll ask for your phone number. They're very private about it, and then select Mind Shifters Radio as a special. And then as each Podbean show starts, now Dr. Tim will be doing the regular needle app, but you'll get a notification. So on the 27th, we're going to do the first hour of the workshop, The Circle of Life and How to Play It. The 28th, we'll do the second hour. If you've never done that workshop, if you're not familiar at it, it looks at what I refer to as the upper and the lower path. And you'll remember we said many times that the non-being mind has a cheap copy. It tries to pretend that it's got everything that the mind of being has. So it's got a cheap copy of everything that's real in this spiritual dimension. And so what that does is I end up, I've got my 4x8 whiteboard, and I do two circles on the board and look at what's the lower path behavior, what's the lower path mind say we're going to do about this, and what's the upper path behavior, what's the alternative, and how do you get there? So the circle of life and how to play it, how to get from lower path inclinations to the upper path. So that's going to be February 27th and 28th. And then on the course of the weekend, and then March the 3rd and the 4th, we're going to do the 2 hours of Empowered to Heal. So we're going to take a look at, from one of our travel workshops, the audio track of the video workshop, Empowered to Heal. So that'll be on Monday, March the 3rd, and on Tuesday, March the 4th, we'll do the second hour of that. And then on March the 5th, we'll go into mind-body bioenergetics, looking at how the mind-body unit operates, nervous system operates from an energetic point of view. And then on March 6th and March 7th, we're going to lay out the Naturopathic Keys to Health. So March 6th will be the first session of Naturopathic Keys, and then March 7th will be the second session. So looking forward to those being available. And as far as I know, I'm not sure yet, but it looks like to get those workshops, you'll have to do them live. You'll have to be on Podbean live because there's not going to be a recording of it available. So those workshops, February 27th, 28th, Circle of Life, March 3rd and 4th, Empowered to Heal, March 5th, Mind Body Bioenergetics, March 6th, Naturopathic Keys, March Part 1, and March 7th, Naturopathic Keys Part 2. And again, that'll be on Podbean. So make sure you've got Podbean downloaded. Select Mind Shifters. You'll get a notification when those shows are coming on. So rock and roll. And let's see, we've got a comment or two here. Yes, you can. Yes, there's a question. How can we find you on Podbean? So, Kemi, you go to the Podbean app, or you go to your app store and just put in the word Podbean, download the app, it's free, and then it'll ask you to register yourself. That way you'll get notifications. And then select Mind Shifters Radio as a favorite, and then as soon as that show's ready to start, then you'll get a notification. Cool. And of course the DVDs are available if somebody wants to purchase them, and or you can get a permanent streaming link. So lots of ways to get the information, but it'll be free on Mind Shifters Radio starting on Thursday. And I'll invite everybody, if you would, to please hold the space for us in the work that we're going to be doing, the training I'm going to be doing with Patrick, so that he can do a full-blown Quantum StillPoint. Once you experience it, you'll realize why you can't do it for yourself. As I said, it's a pretty physically intensive process, and you just, there are pieces of it you just can't do to yourself. Although I did my best a couple of weeks ago. If you tap into that show, it was a pretty powerful experience just the same, but I'm looking forward to being it rather than being an active participant, because a lot of the Quantum StillPoint process is about being in that quiet space, developing your ability to go deeper and deeper and deeper into that quiet space. And that's the whole design, that's the whole idea of the Quantum StillPoint, is to recognize that our lives are designed to be experienced as conscious, active, present love, and to continuously feel the impact of that love in every cell of our structures. And my offering is, that's the only true definition of health there is. And when you free yourself from perception, when you free yourself from errant belief, simply living as the empowered and empowering presence of love, my offering would be, that's what makes us human. And so that's where we're going to go with that. And I'm delighted that you're part of it. And before I get into a topic that I have in mind, if you have a question or a thought for us, it's a good time to push the call button. And thank you for that conversation, Susan. You'll see as the conversation unfolds that you inspired me to take my Quantum StillPoint session to another level in terms of my own process. So I really appreciate everybody who gives us input on the show, the questions, the thoughts, the answers, the directions that come from the interaction are just monumentally valuable. And as I was thinking about our conversation yesterday, Susan, I went back. I've been working on the sequence of our Quantum StillPoint that starts next week with both Patrick and myself and the guests that we've got coming. And based on your interaction with mine yesterday, since then, my mind kind of focused in on one of the quotes that I read yesterday, and a particular part of that quote from Max Planck. Recognizing Max Planck as, a giant and what awareness he had to have to be able to even think of this. And this is going back 40s. I'm thinking 40s, something like that. So I'm going to read the whole quote, and then I'm going to go back to the part that Susan, again, thank you, that you inspired me to go to understand on a different level, or I should say to grok, if you're not familiar with that term. If you've read the book Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, it's interesting, and I just have today made the connection. But in that book, there's a character who's born on the moon, and he comes to Earth, and he comes from such a different world that, you know, life on Earth is like all foreign, all just totally and completely foreign to him. There's little of it that he comprehends. And when he comes across something that he does not comprehend, he groks it. And how that's explained in the book, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's years ago since I read it, but basically what he does is he withdraws all of his sensory awareness from the world and takes it inside and internally digests the experience that he's just had in the world. So yesterday, Susan, you inspired me to grok just one part of this quote that I read yesterday from Max Planck. So again, think back, what kind of being must this be? In all my research, I have never come across matter. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. Behind this force is a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Now, I've edited his, in the flyer that we'll be using, I've edited his quote slightly because it's not just a conscious and intelligent mind. Unfortunately, for most people, the state of the world today, it's an unconscious and unintelligent mind that's running the show. And so what this morning in my breathing time, I was really grokking was this idea of one, all matter is a bundle of energy given form by an intelligent spirit. So your material existence, your material form, obviously has been brought into expression through the cooperation and participation of your intelligent spirit. Grok that for a minute. Your body is a reflection of your intelligence. Or the unconscious dynamics that are out of reach of your intelligence. And that gives me a whole different insight, a whole new level of insight into the power of Yeshua handing us a tool with which to access the non-intelligent part of that process, to access the unconscious. And when I say non-intelligent, I mean a part of us that has no choices, but simply plays out what's in it energetically. So to just really grok that, you are the intelligent being behind your world of form. That's pretty amazing when you just really stop and think of that. And then he follows out with, there is no matter. It exists by virtue of a force. So grok that one. Everything that happens in your so-called material world comes about as a force. An energetic force initiated by you, either consciously or unconsciously. That's just, monumental. So he says, I can tell you this much. This intelligent force brings the particles of an atom into vibration and holds this this most minute solar system of the atom together. So if in your material world there are energetic patterns, yours or mine, I was working on mine this morning. I spent about 3 hours breathing this morning. And entering, for me, more deeply into the practice, once again, inspired by you yesterday, Susan, into the practice of literally bringing awareness down to the level where I'm in touch with what is this force that's holding this particular aberrant or healthy structure together. Because it is this intelligent force called a human life, according to, he doesn't mention human life, but that's implied, that is, quote, bringing an atom into vibration and holds this minute solar system together. And this mind is the matrix of all matter. Now, remembering that the opening words in the book of John 2,000 years ago do not say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. They say, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. So if you think of Max Planck as a physicist, and then you listen to those words of John, Yeshua is speaking as a physicist. And if we're lost in the world of upset and pain and trauma, if as this intelligent force, we have unknowingly brought together these energetic patterns, these literal vortices of energy that Max Planck speaks of, and we bring together vortices of energy that are of a disintegrative nature into any particular part of our tissue structure, i.e., as our conversation went yesterday, knees, hips, then what are we going to have to do to undo it? Yeshua says forgiveness is the answer to that question. Literally, that's what allows us to go to that level of what is the energetic force that's holding this trauma-based vortices of energy in place somewhere in our tissue structure where it creates deterioration. And then add to that Carl Jung's statement because everybody's looking out there for the answer. Everybody's, out there, the world out there, that's where we're going to find the answer. Carl Jung says, who looks without dreams. If you're looking at constructs of your mind, pictures in your mind resonated by events in the world, then those pictures, which are literally generated by your brain, are painted on the inside of your eyeballs. And he says, if you're doing that, you're lost in a dream. And then he says, who looks within awakens. So this sacred inner journey is what we're looking to engage in. The collapsing of perception, where one consciously enters one's own form as the presence of love, carrying the presence of love, and depositing the presence of love into every space where there is an energetic dynamic that is holding energies together that have a destructive nature. So that's what my morning was consumed with this morning. Thank you, Susan. Of literally getting into a space of being totally and completely disconnected from the external world. And traveling on the breath to each place in my structure where there was an indicator that something didn't belong there. And to consciously create a vortex of energy based in love and introduce it into that tissue. Which means letting go, softening everything in the structure. Normally if you got a pain somewhere, what do most people do? Oh, they tighten up around it, hold it, and try to push it away. Well, on Quantum StillPoint, the opposite is what we're looking for. We're going to invite you to go in and embrace it, enter it as a conscious being, conscious, intelligent being, carrying the master solvent of all energetic patterns based in hostility or fear and dissolving it. Progressively softening. Remember, in Aramaic, the word Satan is not about a dude with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork. The word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. Instead of being out there with your senses telling stories about how it's all about what they're doing, the opposite is what's required to enter as a conscious being, presencing love, progressively becoming less resistant, less trapped in Satan. And the best way I know for that is to just keep softening into the breath until your physiology, being freed of resistance, becomes a superconductor. And that's when the energies that have been locked in are dissolved. That's where, as love enters in on a tissue level, consciously, purposely, you're doing exactly what Max Planck was talking about. You're giving form as an intelligent spirit. You're becoming a force, an intelligent mind that brings conscious, active, present love into your own tissue structure and through your tissue structure into the world. And that's where, in breathing and opening to that, letting go of the resistance, actuality, we've got this Harvard research that says in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits of data, and most of us are stuck in that perception, in those painted pictures on the inside of our eyeballs, and we call that the world. That's the world that needs to be collapsed. It's been estimated in that time frame, 9 bits of data consciously, 10,000 brain cells firing, that there are perhaps as many as 20 trillion bits of data available from the actuality. Am I willing to soften in and fully grok that? Allow that quantum energy, the actuality, where truth and the active presence of love have not been disturbed, no matter what goes on in the world. Am I willing to let that in? Am I willing to yield to that? A life that's lived in perceptual blame and denial, the belief that somebody or something outside of us is the cause of what's moving within, is what shuts down the truth and hides or inhibits the energy flow that creates this artificial veil, this unnatural condition called an unconscious mind. The book's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And what do people do? They repeat painful experiences sourced from their own unconscious minds, always believing the pictures painted out of their unconscious minds but projected onto their eyeballs, and thinking that it's out there. We're looking to reverse that. And each person that does that, I would offer, opens the world to a whole other level. You might remember several weeks ago when I was talking about Quantum StillPoint, I brought forward another quote from Carl Jung where he says, the healer or teacher is not just working for a particular patient, but for himself or herself as well, and his or her own soul. And in so doing is perhaps think about Carl Jung. What awareness did he have to be able to say this? By doing that work, one is perhaps laying an infinitesimal grain in the scales of humanity's soul. Small and invisible as this contribution may be, it is yet an opus magnum. Each one who withdraws their senses from the world, goes inside, is brave enough to face what's there, and allows themselves to grok. What battle are you going to have to face? What generational pattern has been laid into your tissue structure energetically in these vortices of energy that Max Planck is talking about? And are you willing to have your opus magnum be written in your healing, the healing of your family system, the healing of your corner of humanity? Horace Mann, I would interpret, wrote about this when he said, be ashamed to die unless you have won some small battle for humanity. And so we're looking at entering into process, not mind. and to have that experience directly experienced, and it's not something you can figure out. You listen to literally virtually every person who contacts this work first time around, I have a conversation with them, they say, yeah, man, I've been trying to figure this out for so long. You can't figure this out. The work required to produce the experience cannot be bypassed. You got to face yourself. You got to face that unconscious, patterned, unresolved dynamic in yourself and make that core shift within. It can't be imposed from without. Opening oneself fully to the actuality, letting this, whatever this actuality is, and who knows, we may be a gnat sitting on the nose of a camel trying to comprehend the desert. But can we trust enough to soften, open, and let it in fully, and allow its transforming experience, its transforming energy, its transforming presence to go through us? Having a direct personal experience. Not beliefs, not dogma, not doctrine, not words. Not brutally enforcing some kind of dogma that if you believe this, then you'll go to heaven. All errant desire pushes away the possibility. It's the canceling of the goal that opens the energy window. A personal experience, personally experienced. Giving up the automatic dissociation from everything, including the generational patterns that one finds too painful to face in themselves. And what kind of history do each of us have beyond just our own lives? What did your parents go through? What did their parents go through, and theirs before them, and theirs before them? And recognize that the so-called mind of the body, carbon-based memory, will take all of that data and make cheap copies of what it thinks the experience would be. Effort upon effort upon effort, where the exact reverse is required. The softening, the moving into literally a superconductor state. The objective of this work is to break the addiction to projection. So I wonder what that's resonating for everybody. We're almost 35 minutes in, so I'm going to just say, hey, how about telling us what your thoughts are? Comments? Push the call button. Is this arousing anything for anybody in terms of questions? Where do you go for that? What, push the call button. Say hello. What's on your mind? So what would it look like then, if nobody's going to make a comment or push the call button? What would it look like? What would you suspect you'd be facing if you were to totally and completely unblock the veil of your temple and let every unresolved energy that's in there begin to move? Now, most people, I suspect, would say, oh my God, that would be insane. Well, not if you've engaged in the practice of keeping love conscious active and present. Not if you've shifted your personal code. Remember, your mind has a set of rules that it wants you to follow in doing behavior. And the personal code of most people is something they've never chosen, something they've never engaged in. They have no idea that it exists or where it came from. And yet every time they face a certain situation, their mind has an absolute set of rules that says, this is what you're going to do. And even if you say, and I'm never going to do that again, notice that when the stress is up and the chips are down, this is what you're going to do. Until you realize in that situation, if the behavior prompt from your own physiology is out of harmony with who you choose to function as, then there's work to be done. There's the next piece of forgiveness to be done. And, the objective of the commitment is to have a conscious personal code that I choose to engage in so that I free myself from the past vortices of energy that are stored in my physiology and in my genes. I literally disassemble those energetic patterns that are held as seeming permanent energetic conditions in my physiology. And if they're of a disintegrative nature, what seem to be permanent, painful, disintegrative energies within my tissue structure. And am I willing if there is pain in my physiology to own and dissolve, forgive? Well, that's awesome, Celinda. We're just delighted you're here and glad to be on the team. If you're not looking at the notes in the chat room, Celinda said, thanks, that's exactly what I need to hear. A perfect follow-up for the first hour. Yay, Dr. Tim. So what do I need to embrace? What do I need to soften into? What do I think if I soften into it, I'm going to just get lost forever in? And instead of getting lost forever, instead of buying that thought disorder, know that you have power over what moves in you, and that that's a space to soften, to let the veil of your temple open, and to know that whatever it is that's stored in tissue structure, it is from the past, and you survived it on the way in, and you will survive it as you expose it to love and dissolve it again, as you remove it. And make room for what Max Planck is talking about, this intelligent mind to become a conscious force that originates the energetic pattern that assembles these vortices of energy that we call matter. Takes trust. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. You got to be out of your mind. It sounds like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, but it really isn't. You know, if what most people call the mind, and that is the function of the cells of their body that stored information from the past that repeats, it's not the mind at all. It's just a database. And under stress, the voice from that database will sound like your own, but it will actually be your power person's voice wanting to run the show one more time. Wanting not because in the unconscious there's volition and a want for something as such, but simply the accumulated pattern of energy will tend to take over. And those patterns of energy constitute what we would call your asker. Remember when they said, ask and you will receive? That's the problem. You have asked and you are receiving what you have asked for. And most minds say, wait a minute, I didn't ask for this. Yeah, but in your quietest moments, what were you pondering? What were you resisting? What energetic patterns within you did you refuse to breathe into? Did you refuse to feel? Did you refuse to bring the transforming presence of active love to? Can you get quiet? Just quiet. One of the addictions that needs to be overcome is running your mind. Now, before a lot of people can get to dealing with the addiction of running their minds, they've got to get past the addiction of running their mouths. Yes, that's true too. But allowing it to get quiet. You know, as a result, and once again, thank you, Susan, for the conversation yesterday, because it really opened a space for me. And I've never really been connected with anybody that's involved in Buddhist meditation. And so I don't really know a lot about what the instructions are, but I'm wondering how much of that quietness that's searched for in the Buddhist tradition is about being able to embrace, being able to go literally. I mean, when you think of it, you know, you hear this physicist describing a vortex of energy. You know, think about a dust devil that you've seen. And of course, if you take all the dust out, there's nothing there that you can see. But there is an energetic force. The wind is twisting. It picks up the dust so you can see something. But you know, that's exactly what Max Planck was talking about. That when we originate an energy, that's the vortex that is behind the dust devil. And our tissue structure is the dust coming together. Oh my God, how did they say that? Of dust you are made, and of dust you will to dust you will return. Yeah. My God, maybe our bodies are nothing but a dust devil. And are we willing to confront the patterns of generations and generations of untoward thought and clean it up? Literally applying forgiveness. The tool that goes in and dissolves what never belonged in the hardened heart of humanity. You remember things like you go back to the scriptures and gee, they allowed divorce. Why was divorce introduced into the process? Because of their hardened hearts. Because people had created a veil, a barrier that locked into their unconscious minds so much drama, trauma, and pain that once it was activated in a relationship, unless somebody really stepped in and used the tools, it was going to be impossible to ever overcome. So you might as well let them divorce. But that's not the preferable answer. The preferable answer is to get back to, why did these two beings come together in the first place? What was the attraction? And what was it that hardened their hearts against breathing into their own vortices of energy that held generations of pain and trauma, and the willingness to embrace them and process through them? Think of every thought you engage in. Remember, mind energy becomes flesh. Every thought you engage in, think of it as a dust cell, as literally a vortex of energy. And do you want that gathering dust in your tissue structure? If not, and or if it's there and creating diseases in your tissue structure, and pain is just a warning signal there's a disease going on in there, are you willing to embrace that and let that be undone? Are you willing to open to whatever the quality of energy is that's created that vortices? Can you soften and breathe into it and embrace it fully? Can you, for your own dust devils, be engaged in the gentle art of blessing? Thank you, Tim, for doing that interview. Can you soften the place in your body? And I say that because as I said those words, I noticed a tightening in my own back. What is it in me that I don't want to bless? Am I willing to embrace that? Am I willing to let that come forward? Instead of pushing against it and holding the tissue, am I willing to embrace it fully and allow it to come forward for healing? Miss Susan, you have a thought for us. Are you with us, young lady? I can hear you breathing, Susan.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had
Ooh.
said talk. So I was just.
I gotcha. Hey, welcome.
This is amazing.
See what you started?
Well, I mean, it takes a certain kind of somebody to pick up the stuff and run with it. And you're a big picker-upper and running with person. So thanks for giving me all that credit. But I mean, really, you made hay with whatever we were talking about. That was great. The amazing thing about all this is the perfect uh, connecting show after Dr. Tim's show. He's been reading from this book in which you are cited by Alan Cohen called Of Course in Miracles.
Right.
And at one point, Alan Cohen is explaining how he landed at Newark Airport and met with a friend, and he was in not very good mental shape. Let's say that. So he greeted his friend at the baggage claim or wherever, and he said, "Let's play a game." And she went along with it. And the game was, let's pretend we're in heaven. Everything that's happening, this is heaven. So everything they looked at was as if it was happening in heaven. And they described watching people come through the big doorways off the plane and into the main part of the terminal, being greeted
Right.
by other people. And this is like being greeted by those who've gone ahead of you in heaven. And they began to see everything. It's like what you've been saying, choosing to see things differently. I thought we're onto a new tool, even if you could just practice doing that. And then you mentioned the gentle art of blessing, which is a choosing to bless everyone no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's an immediate,
Transmutation.
yeah, it's just a choosing to step away from your current or habitual way of seeing things and seeing them differently, and that could be an instant, if you're in trouble, you could just use that as a tool until you can get your worksheet out and do the digging.
Dropping your BS.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to, so much of what you said, like, I've had this prick in my hip and knee, and all of a sudden this could be a blessing. Like, I could welcome it. It's just a lovely thought all the way around.
Well, joining you in being able to do it, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and to keep opening that veil. If you think of it as, taking the metaphor that was used in the book of everything beneath the veil is in hell. And am I going to open the veil and invite it into heaven? Am I going to let that energy come into this space of transformative, active, present love and grok it, be with it fully, and embrace it?
Embracing it. That's a word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ah, mind blowing. Well, we were with the refugees this morning, and a lot of them have stopped coming because they're afraid to come out their door.
Right.
The ones who are coming, having language is a barrier in some way. If you don't know the other person's language, what have you got? Your children again. And if you're children, you're open in a new way. And the most fun and lovely things happen because we don't have any way of connecting that's been contrived over time or is consistent with a bad script, for instance. We're just in there, and a young mother came up to me, didn't know how to say it, but she had a toddler with her who needed something to eat, and it couldn't be just any old thing. So with sign language and drawing her into the pantry and pointing, and it's easy to solve those little problems, but those are the gateways into heaven, kind of. I'm not saying it very well, but
I got it.
thanks.
Actually, you're reminding me of back in 1976, they had the Olympics in Montreal, Canada. And I had a music recording studio in Nashville, Tennessee at that time. And we had a young artist that wrote a song about the 23rd Olympiad. That's what it was the 23rd Olympics. And so I went up there to represent the song, basically to sell it, to promote it, to put it out there. And one of the things that I ended up doing is I got into collecting team medallions. And when they do the Olympics, every team member gets X number of medals or medallions of some kind from their country to exchange with other athletes and other people. Well, I ended up spending the first few days at the Olympics doing the music thing. And then when I was complete with that, I literally spent the rest of the time in, I think I've got now medallions from that Olympics from about 150 or 160 countries. So, I mean, the whole time was spent with people who didn't even have a translator that could, speak any 2 out of 10 that were standing around, as we're doing these exchanges and doing all the things you're talking about, the animated trading and, all of that sort of thing, arriving at this exchange of medallions. So I certainly relate to that and remember that as it was really a pretty sweet. I wish I had been more conscious at that time of just the energetic dynamics of that interaction, but that's what you just resonated for me. It was pretty sweet.
How nice. What kind of music were you playing, Michael?
Well, we had a studio in Nashville, Tennessee, but we did all kinds of music. And this song, geez, I don't even know if I could find it again. If I do, I'll bring it on and play it. But it was a young artist named Butler. And he was a kid who wrote a song about the 23rd Olympics. And it was kind of a crossover country kind of song. But coming out of a studio in Nashville, most of it was country-oriented music.
Were you a guitarist or a singer? Or?
No. I was a partner in owning the studio,
Oh, I see.
and so I went up to the Olympics to promote this song as
Oh,
the
I see.
studio.
Wow.
It was our record.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff you've done. Wow. I know we can call you and ask you about music now, and we can ask you about bones and muscles, and we, oh, yeah. Wow. Well, we had another game today too. I got a package. People bring in donations of food, but they don't bring in enough for 90 people. They'll bring in a bag of chocolate bars. This was a big jackpot thing. Somebody came in with a little bag of probably 12 chocolate bars. So we didn't know how to distribute these because it wouldn't be fair. The first 12 people would get a chocolate bar, and that would be the end of that. We might have a fight in there. Of course, that never happens. People are just too sweet in there. But so we decided um, this was a Haitian language teacher. He had come up from Haiti and he knew English. So he was running a language class for the most advanced students. And it's lovely to see how he works. And he has a whiteboard and everything. But we had the candy bars. And so when a student would answer a question correctly, like a grammatical question, they might get a candy bar. And there was amazing amount of hilarity over these candy bars. But that's the heaven thing that Dr. Tim was talking about. It seems to happen in there, even though it's hectic and chaotic and there's a lot of fear and you can feel the energy in the room. Still, there's that element of just being right there, right then, and everything's not only okay, but really wonderful right then. Boy, that's another exercise. Come into the present and just be there.
Hmm.
So that's what you've been
Right.
talking about in different ways, and it just perfect hand in glove with Dr. Tim's show, I thought.
Sweet. Awesome. And I see Jane had made the note Alan Cohen's writing, and Alan and I hung out quite a bit back about probably 40 years ago.
This is Jane who's saying this?
Yeah, Jane is saying in the notes,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at
Oh,
the
okay.
notes, she had
All
mentioned
right.
that. But Alan, went through several times through the whys as having to begin work way back in the early days. But anyway, Jane's saying he really does love communicate the course principles well. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
he's doing a great job. I'm still learning the gentle art of loving and blessing myself after years of holding myself hostage to internal criticism. Well, that's a good thing to embrace and get rid of.
Wow.
And I'll just make the suggestion, Jane, and we want to go one additional step, and that is rather than loving yourself as though love is a verb, allowing yourself to embrace yourself as love, the truth of your human beingness. And I'm glad you're back on the beam.
Mm.
And you say remembering these Michael tools. Okay, well, it's getting close to calling me a verb. How did you first connect with the work, Jane? And beyond that, go ahead, Susan. I was just responding to.
No, that's okay. I don't have anything more to say. I'd be interested to hear from Jane how she connected.
And I just noticed that there was a note from earlier from Cami. And Cami, you connect on Podbean by just downloading the Podbean app and look for Mind Shifters Radio and then select it as a special. And that way you'll get notifications when those shows are going to start. So Jane, do you have anything to share? I've over the years I've had 2 or 3 people who spell their name Jayne, and so I'm wondering, Jane, if you're one of those or just where you connected with the work. It'd be nice to know. And we're down to about 1 minute. So any other thoughts for you, Miss Susan?
No, but thanks for just hanging in. You know, I did discover from my journals when I found the show, it was 2017, early August. I told that to Dr. Tim. I put in my journal that I had just listened to this show by a Richard Ryce. So I'd
Ah,
gotten half your name right. And then from then on, I was off and running, taking notes and putting them, you know, it was just, I never stopped. And then when COVID came around, you became the center pole because we were so isolated here. We didn't have kids who needed schooling at home. Suddenly, all the commitments
right.
we were on dropped away. Tim and I were by ourselves. We'd go for these long walks. It was a really blessed time. But part of that blessedness was your 2 hours. Oh, it was 1 hour then. You and Dr. Tim were running the show for an hour, and I would
Right.
just settle in and put my feet up, and it was this incredible oasis. So thanks. It's been
Sweet. Awesome.
great.
Delighted. And Jane, glad to hear. Okay, now I'm connecting. So Florida, 14 years ago, you did the codependence workshop.
Whoa.
So Sally Jane, nice to connect. Glad you're here. And Miss Susan, we appreciate you. Celinda, glad things are impacting for everybody, and including me. Delighted, and we appreciate each of you, and invite you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world, and when you give it to your own physiology, you give it to the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.